this kid is not, just something maybe flash in the pan, if you will. He came up as a development driver for Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs, yeah, the Washington football team head coach Joe Gibbs, who has won on the NASCAR level. So that is major weight to be in a camp with Joe Gibbs. And now he is a full-time driver. Full-time. And that is very important. And I'll tell you why in just a second. But he is a full-time driver for Richard Petty. Richard Petty, if Dale Earnhardt is the greatest, Richard Petty is probably considered God in NASCAR. So for him to be under that belt, being associated with Joe Gibbs and being associated with Richard Petty, lets you know this dude has skills. He is the real deal, and he should be taken serious. And he showed out there with his second place finish that he should be taken serious. Now, I know a lot of people thinking like NASCAR is boring and all that stuff. And I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of NASCAR. But the one thing I do respect, for NASCAR drivers is this. The Daytona 500 is the reason they call it the Daytona 500 is because it's 500 miles. I don't even like to spend 10 miles in a car during the summer. And they're doing 500 miles. There's no AC in those cars. No AC. They're trying to keep those things as light as possible so they can get around the track as fast as possible. So you're in not ideal-like situations. I've heard stories of drivers getting out and they've lost 5 to 10 pounds from starting the race to the end of the race. You got to really think about dehydration. You got to keep your head on the swivel. You're going anywhere from 150 to probably 200 miles per hour. This ain't something that you can just put on cruise control and then just maneuver your way through and just, like they be doing in the movies and everything. And you're going to look to the side and, look at people. No, this is a very dangerous sport. And you have to be an athlete. I know people are going to be like, drivers are not athletes. Yes, they are. Because as I have found out in the city of Atlanta, people cannot drive. And so you have to be an athlete to drive at the speeds that they are driving at. There's one person in here that they gave an Uber account to that be driving that's dangerous, and that's Lopan. Yeah, and Lopan is in the building. I forgot to say he was in here. So ladies, all the ladies that's wondering where Lopan is, he is here. He is hanging out. But, again, this guy, Darrell Wallace Jr., man, he is doing something big. And he's not the first, because the first person was Wendell Scott. And Wendell Scott, man, this dude went through a lot to get where he had got in the world of NASCAR. It was during a time where people basically, it was during the time of racism. People would not let this guy drive just because he was black. They would actually tell him he could bring his car to the racetrack and then let somebody white drive his car. That was the type of racism. Another thing that he dealt with was that he couldn't retaliate like other drivers. So they treated him different. They would wreck on purpose so he wouldn't win races. And this is what this guy dealt with. But he actually paved the way for guys like Darrell Wallace Jr. so that they can get a fair shake and a fair opportunity and be associated, with top of the line racing teams. So just like Joe Gibbs and Richard Petty, and before Darrell Wallace, there was a gentleman named Bill Lester. Now, Bill Lester, I met Bill Lester one time, and he's a guy, you can tell he don't play no games, and he's very set upon, this is just from one meeting that I had with him. I can tell, like, some of the stories they were saying about him is that once when he has his mindset on something, he's stuck on it, and you're not going to deter him for it. So he drove in the NASCAR truck series as well, but then he also had some time in NASCAR driving the cars, not at a full-time rate like Darrell Wallace is at this point. But these guys, actually should be applauded, because what they're trying to do is that they're trying to change the stereotype. And for me, the one thing I think NASCAR, should really do at this point, if they haven't already, because when Bill Lester actually drove in the NASCAR race, they did make a piece about it. They did make a big deal about it, but this is what needs to happen. If NASCAR is trying to grow their fan base, obviously some of this is demographics. We probably it's probably safe to say, and I'm making an educated guess here, because I don't have any facts here, but I'm gonna say that it's probably a bigger sport in the Southeast more than anywhere in the U.S. You have it up in Michigan, you do have it out west, but as far as like the Southeast, I think the Southeast is where it reigns supreme. But if you're trying to develop this thing, if you're trying to make it, expand. Kind of like what they did with Danica Patrick. To me, they're gonna have to get behind, Darrell Wallace and push this thing kind of like they did Danica Patrick. We know racing, is not a cheap sport. It is not something that you can just say, you know what, I'm gonna start racing tomorrow. But there's one thing that kids enjoy, little boys and little girls, and they enjoy it when they get older as adults, and that is speed. And if you can sell speed to some of these kids, and you can sell Darrell Wallace to kids that resemble him, but also, just kids that maybe can identify with not being in the ideal situation or being in the, because like I said, it's a very expensive sport. You just can't just show up with a car and just start driving. And then it's a lot of politics that goes, with it as well. You want to get behind this guy, and especially with the performance that he did this past weekend, finishing second. You get points, and that's the other thing, about NASCAR is that it's a point system, and then they have a playoffs. And basically, if you make the playoffs, and I call it the playoffs, I think they call it somebody else, but if you make the playoffs, you got a chance to win, the NASCAR Series title, And finishing in second, definitely winning helps you out, but finishing top 3, top 4, and top 5 finishes, if he can keep doing that, in top 10s, he might be able to make a name for himself, but he's going to have to keep it up. And I see he could probably change this thing, kind of like another Bubba. Bubba Stewart did, for dirt bikes. I don't know why I want to say Harold Carmichael. I know it's Carmichael. I might be forgetting his first name. But, Bubba Stewart basically took over, for that when Carmichael, left motocross. And all these kids, start following him. They fell in love with him. And then you had other kids, black kids that was like, yo, that's what I want to do. And this is an opportunity for NASCAR to expand their product and broaden out, and market themselves even more, behind a guy like this. It doesn't hurt to have him and then the other guys that you already got, because Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr. already retired, but Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon already retired. So a lot of those heads that you had that was in NASCAR, that was a staple, they're starting to retire. So you got to get some new blood. And here's the opportunity. Here's the big opportunity to do that. So and venture out, any other sports. But if you definitely, if you get a chance, you might want to watch it. You never know. You might become a fan. You never know. We saw the effect that Tiger Woods had on golf. Now, I played golf before Tiger. I'd probably say right when he started, because I was in high school, and I think Tiger was a freshman at Stanford. So I started playing right around that time, but I started playing before I knew who Tiger Woods was. But when Tiger Woods took off, you had all these other people that said, you know what, I'm going to start playing, golf. And so I'm not saying people are going to say, I'm going to start racing, but they may start watching the, product and make NASCAR a little bit broader sport. I mean, that's what it is, So, I'm going to go to the Wait a Minute Show chat room here. We got some folks already in here. Mocha Bella was talking about Bubba sounded like Elroy the mechanic on Martin when I heard him talk. Yeah, I was not expecting that type of voice, but yeah, he came out there. He was like, your camshaft roster is messed up with your push rod. And he was like, you know what I love more than racing? My music, man, my music. You know, you was waiting for him to say it. Don't you know no good? But yeah, it was different. But it's the South, you know, and he got that draw a little bit. So I'm sure it helps him, you know, also. So Mac Summerhill Soldier for real. I'm just gonna start saying Mac for real. Y'all be coming up with some of these names, boy. He said you can race at the smaller tracks and build a name for yourself. So yeah, exactly. That's what Wendell Scott did. Obviously he had to go that route, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You can start at smaller tracks, build a name for yourself, and you work yourself up through the ranks. And then get sponsorship, and then get on a team, you know, a bigger team, if you will. And if you're good, you know, at this point, people can't deny it. They will probably hate. Racism still is going on. I'm sorry, you know, if that makes someone upset, but yeah, the people are still gonna hate, you know, on it. But until you keep making those moves, then you slowly but surely starts changing people's mind. But yeah, Mac Farrell, you are exactly right. You know, Clay Davis talking about ninjas need to focus on baseball and football. Now, I will say this about baseball, Clay. There's a lot more guaranteed money. You can play a lot longer, but it is very hard, you know, to get to the major leagues, you know. But hey, I mean, any sport is hard. But I hear you on that. That baseball money, you know, and the longevity opportunity that you have there is serious. So, but shouts out to Daryl Bubba Wallace Jr. and his accomplishment over this past weekend. Second place is a big time move. So, you know, definitely he'll be looking to win next time in his next race, and as he always does. So we'll move out of NASCAR. Yeah. Moving out of NASCAR. So we'll move out of NASCAR into a little football. I told you we're going to talk a little football. We're always going to sprinkle some football in here because it used to be an off season in the NFL, but it's not really necessarily an off season. It's kind of like just a little bit of a smoke break, if you will. You know, we still talk a little bit about it, but we really don't go in depth. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So a few things out there. And again, you listen to the Wait a Minute show with your man, Jelani JB Bodie. And Lopan is in the building as well, fresh off of Uber driving. And we are going to talk about some people that got cut. Now, not a surprise. Doug Martin, formerly of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he got cut a couple days ago, I want to say. Was it Monday? It was either Monday or Tuesday, but he got cut. Bucks are going to go ahead and move on from him. This is no surprise at this point. With it, he had some ups and downs, as he spoke about, you know, in his letter to the fans, and he appreciated, you know, everything that the Bucks did for him, which I definitely, you know, feel him on that. And he said this is the business. He understands the decision that they want to do. They got some younger talent, and the draft is coming up, and they got some, you know, guys that they can get. And prime example is in the same division, how the Saints got Alvin Kamara in the third round. So I'm sure the Bucks are looking at that, and they're just like, look, we're 29 years old. We're going to go ahead, let you get on up out of here and see if you can jump on with another team. So what are some teams that Doug Martin probably could end up on, or a team that may want him to make a visit, you know, to their team? So there was a few teams, you know, out there, and one that stuck out that I'm just going to go ahead and get it over with right now. Because it's, I mean, if you're a running back, everybody, you know, is probably thrown to this team, and that is the New England Patriots. So, yes, we know, I mean, because the Patriots, they will bring you in, and they will say you will be the seventh running back, you know, and then you can work your way up, but we'll give you got a great opportunity to get to the Super Bowl, and guys, you know, go for that, and they just be like, you know what, I'm going to get on this team. So there's an opportunity, you know, for something like that to happen. Now, before I get into the rest of my list, I see some people throwing out some names in the Wait a Minute show chat room. So that's how we make this thing interactive. So I'm going to go and read some of those before I go to my other team. So Mac Farrell threw out there, he said, Doug Martin to the Ravens. And Mac, I'll say this. I thought about going to the Ravens, and Tiffany Sports and Heels may not like that, but and Tiffany Sports and Heels, stop distracting the listeners. But if you know her, you'll know what I'm talking about. Stop distracting the listeners, Tiffany. But I thought about the Ravens, but for me, they got they